Morning. My name is Rocky Moretti. Moretti is Moretti, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP, a transportation nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. Our new report today, Keeping Colorado Mobile, is really an analysis of the latest data from the Colorado Department of Transportation, but also the U.S. Department of Transportation, really looking at the condition of Colorado's transportation system, the levels of reliability and traffic congestion on that system, the importance of freight, and very critically, the latest trends and importance of traffic safety on Colorado's transportation system. The format is I'll give my comments. We are then going to call we're very pleased to have a really exciting lineup of local speakers from around the state. And then finally, there'll be an opportunity for the journalists who are attending today's news conference to ask questions. You can use the chat, you can raise hands or use the chat function to alert my colleague, Carolyn Kelly. And when we get into the questions, you'll be elevated to the panel and you'll have an opportunity to interact with the panelists with any of your questions. The key findings in the report is that Colorado in 2021, both through legislation in Colorado, but also through the federal bipartisan infrastructure legislation, was able to significantly increase investment in Colorado's transportation system. Unfortunately, a significant increase in the rate of inflation for highway construction work, including improving roads and bridges, have to some extent dented the impact of that additional funding. And we've also seen that in Colorado, after a significant drop in travel during the COVID pandemic, what we've seen since then is a return to vehicle travel similar to what we saw before COVID. And in fact, in 2024, the level of vehicle travel in Colorado had returned to levels higher than in 2019 from before the pandemic. And so the latest data from the Department of Transportation is that the state is facing annually a $350 million shortfall in the level of funding that are needed to address the conditions of the system and to continue to make improvements to improve traffic safety and also to improve traffic reliability across the state. And these efforts, notwithstanding the benefits of the 2021 state and federal legislation providing additional investment in Colorado's transportation system, is being hampered by a 45% increase in highway construction costs since 2022. We saw this year, or in 2024, that the inflation rate seems to have set capped, but the reality is that the significant increase has occurred in these costs, and that will be a challenge moving forward, both at the state level and also at the federal level, where the current federal surface transportation program will expire in next year in 2026. The report found that the cost to the public of driving on roads that are in poor condition, of lost time due to traffic congestion, and the economic cost of serious and fatal traffic crashes is $11.4 billion annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average motorist in the Denver area is losing $3,060 annually in the cost of driving on deteriorated roads, roads that have traffic congestion, and roads that are lacking some desirable safety features. The TRIP report finds that the average motorist in the Colorado Springs area is losing $2,610 annually in the cost of driving on roads that are deteriorated, that are congested, and which also lack some needed roadway safety features. The TRIP report estimates that the average motorist in the Grand Junction area is losing $1,704 annually in the cost of driving on roads in poor condition, the economic cost of fatal and serious traffic crashes, and the cost of lost time due to traffic congestion. The report took a look at pavement conditions across the state and found that 24% of major roads and highways in Colorado have pavements in poor condition, and 41% are rated in fair condition. The trip report found that in the Denver area, 33% of major roadways have pavements in poor condition, and 30% are rated in fair condition. In Colorado Springs, the report found that 28% of major roadways have pavements in poor condition, and another 46% are rated in fair condition. The trip report found that in the Grand Junction area, 27% of major roadways have pavements in poor condition, and another 46% are rated in fair condition. The trip report also looked at bridge conditions and noted that 5% of bridges in Colorado are rated in poor condition, and 65% are rated in fair condition and need additional repairs to ensure that these bridges don't slip into poor condition. We also took a look at traffic congestion, and as I pointed out, in 2024, Colorado had a record level of travel as travel for the first time reached levels higher than pre-pandemic levels. We've also seen some changes in traffic congestion patterns since pre-COVID. We're seeing that morning rush hours have not been quite as heavy as they were before the pandemic, but largely evening rush hours have returned to similar levels. We also see additional travel on the weekends, and oftentimes Saturday traffic congestion is worse than Monday in many urban areas. The report found that in the Denver urban area, the average commuter is spending an additional 67 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting an additional 26 gallons of fuel. The trip report found that in the Colorado Springs area, the average motorist is losing 54 hours annually due to traffic congestion and an additional 21 gallons of fuel. In the Grand Junction area, TRIP estimates that the average motorist is spending an additional 13 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 4 gallons of fuel. The report also looked at traffic safety in Colorado. Across the country, we are experiencing a significant traffic safety crisis as we see numerous people being killed or seriously injured in traffic crashes. It's a crisis that really all elements of the transportation community need to address. In Colorado, what we've seen over the last 5 years, from 2019 to 2023, that there were 3,394 traffic fatalities during that period, and a 16% increase from 2019 to 2023. The report points out that over the last 5 years, because the data at the urban levels from 2018 to 2022, the report found that from 2018 to 2022, there was an average of 176 traffic fatalities annually in the Denver area. The trip report found that from 2018 to 2022, there was an average of 81 people killed annually in traffic crashes in the Colorado Springs area. The trip report found that from 2018 to 2022, an average of 18 people were killed annually in traffic crashes in the Grand Junction area. It's estimated that the lack of adequate roadway safety features are a contributing factor, if not necessarily the primary cause, but a significant factor in around a third of traffic fatalities. This is consistent with the U.S. Department of Transportation effort to implement a safe systems approach, and certainly the Colorado Department of Transportation and its peer state transportation agencies have really adopted this strategy, which really focuses on 5 core areas to improve traffic safety and ultimately reduce traffic fatalities as low as possible and ideally to zero. This starts with the driver, making sure that the driver is driving at safe speeds, that the driver is not impaired, that we're using the safest vehicles possible, and that post-care crash, when it's required, is as sophisticated and as fast as possible. But then a very critical element is that we are driving on roads that are safe as possible, and that is for motorists, but also that the system is safe as possible for pedestrian and bicyclists. And so research has shown that these improvements, from adding paved shoulders, from adding rumble strips to clear lane markings, to adding lighting in urban areas, to improving intersections, adding turn lanes where they're appropriate, all of these improvements have a significant impact on improving traffic safety. But clearly, to make those improvements, you need to have the funding available to make those improvements. The trip report also looked at rural transportation in Colorado and notes that 17% of Colorado's rural roads and highways are rated in poor condition, that 6% of Colorado's rural bridges are rated in poor condition, and the traffic fatality rate on Colorado's rural non-interstate routes are significantly higher than they are on all other roads or highways in the state. In fact, on rural non-interstates, the fatality rate per 100 million miles of travel is 2.03 compared to 1.25 on all others. I'll conclude by noting that annually $326 billion of goods are being shipped in and out of Colorado, the majority of them on trucks. And the estimate, when adjusted for inflation in terms of the value of products that will be moved on large trucks in and out of Colorado over the next 25 years, will more than double. So I'm going to conclude there. We have a great lineup of additional speakers, including, and then we'll just sort of go in order. We'll hear from Cody Kennedy, who's a city council member from Grand Junction. We'll hear from Jessica Sandrin, who's also a member of the Council of Thornton City. We'll hear from Naomi Colwell. She is the president of the Aurora Chamber of Commerce. And we will also hear from Jeff Thurmansgaard, who's the vice president of government affairs of the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce. Cody, I'll call on you first for your comments.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. It really is striking to look at the trip report and how well that meshes with my experience here in Grand Junction and the feedback that I get from voters pretty consistently about our roads. You know, the 27% of our local roads are in poor condition, 28% in mediocre condition. That's pretty striking. And as somebody who spent 17 years in law enforcement and certainly takes traffic safety very seriously, it's concerning. And the other thing that really stands out here to me is the amount of conversations that we have about trying to make good environmental decisions, but yet we're not maintaining our roadways, which has significant impact on the additional fuel burn, on the wear and tear on vehicles, which requires more maintenance. So I think that it's an important time for Colorado to really get focused and get their eye on the ball when it comes to our roadways and spending money where we should be spending it. And I think that's one of the things. Roadways and public safety are really those two things are what people rely on the government for. That's what they look to us to do, to make sure that roads are safe and that we can provide public safety. Those are those essential services. We do a lot of other things that are way outside of that realm. And I think that there's probably some places that we can focus, cut some other expenditures, and really look at this and do a better job for our taxpayers in the state of Colorado. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Jessica.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I've been actually working on transportation my entire time on council, which has been 7 years now. And so I'm not surprised at all by the findings. It's just unfortunate that we really haven't seen any improvement in a lot of these areas. Where I'm at north of Denver, Region 1 for CDOT, we actually have every single major highway that crosses through this region. And so what we see is unfortunately a competition of the funding that's available. Nobody's denying that our bridges need repairs and work and improvements. Nobody's denying that 270 needs improvement, I-70, I-25. But where I'm at, we have what we call the crash corridor. And the data has shown repeatedly that that section of the highway along I-25, which is not a city owned roadway, continues to have an increase in the number of severe accidents, deaths, and all sorts of different issues. And so we've seen the cost of road improvements go up significantly, and to the point now where it's just unaffordable. And so while we had a significant amount of money come into the state for infrastructure, it's just not enough. And so the competition amongst cities, I don't see that changing, especially as we hear the report that you just read out on. I just don't see what the actual solution is, given the number of improvements that need to be made in our state. And so, like Cody mentioned, safety, we hear from CDOT, we hear from lots of different agencies that safety is the main concern. But at what point does it really become the main concern? Because we've talked about air quality, we've talked about a lot of different things over the years in transportation. I don't know at what point is that going to be, congestion is a big number, but safety is getting worse. And so while we know that road conditions are a part of it, speeding is another part of it. HOV lanes in this section, we don't have enough shoulder room to do anything. So I just don't see what CDOT and RTD and anyone else for that matter is going to do to actually improve the situation. There's just not enough dollars coming in. There's not enough dollars being spent on it. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. And so our residents are waiting. We're paying tax dollars into the system already that are supposed to go towards these improvements. We're all waiting to see that happen. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak about it.
Thank you, Jessica. We'll now hear from Naomi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come speak to you guys. Representing the business voice of the Aurora metro area. Looking at, we have 400,000 people here in the Aurora community. And so transportation funding has been a huge topic in Colorado for a long time. And we've now reached a point of critical concern. We are failing to maintain the road and bridge infrastructure that every industry in Colorado relies on. And we are not only failing in making it unnecessary expansions to accommodate the growing populations in cities like Aurora, Centennial, the Eastern Metro area, but without a robust and reliable transportation system, businesses may choose not to invest in Colorado, and we risk losing both economic opportunities and the dollars they bring. Our state and local businesses, economy, communities demand and deserve better. Real sustainable solutions are urgently needed in Colorado to ensure we remain at the top destinations for business and employers. And while cities and municipalities have worked hard to secure local funding and address immediate concerns, these efforts alone are not enough. The cost of inaction are far too high for businesses, for families, and for safety. If people cannot get to where they need to go on a dependable road system, we jeopardize not only our state's growth, but its ability to thrive in the future. Now is the time to prioritize and invest in the transportation infrastructure that we will carry Colorado forward. Thank you again. We appreciate all your support.
Thank you, Naomi. And we'll now hear from Jeff.
I'm coming. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. I'm a little bit under the weather. Right. I'm a little under the weather. It's a little difficult being down at the Capitol right now with all of the germs. But at any rate, I just wanted to briefly mention that I think we've come to a place statewide that we have really not prioritized adequate road and bridge infrastructure maintenance, and it's become a significant concern around the state. The longstanding issue has reached a point of critical concern across the state as well. And when infrastructure is not maintained, prioritized, and the state level, business and local economies suffer. Continuing to push these costs out in favor of other projects doesn't serve anybody. In fact, we just worked on 2C down here, which is was made, we passed it just so that we could get extra money for the maintenance and whatnot of our roads down here. And we were forced to do that because the state didn't have a necessary plan. And we want to thank the leadership of my city for doing that, because without that, we would kind of be in a bad spot. So really, in truth, we just would like to see that we're able to maintain the economic vitality of our state, and it's dependent on our ability to support businesses and create jobs and provide community that people want to be in and drive around. Your numbers are very interesting, and I think that that's very telling with the cost associated with commuting, and it's very difficult. So we appreciate the data and appreciate the time today.
Thank you. I'm going to now turn it over to Carolyn, and she can explain how we'll handle questions.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communication and Research for TRIP. So as Rocky had noted before, now that we've heard from Rocky and the panelists about the report itself, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A with the media that are on the call this morning. So the way that'll work is if you've got a question for Rocky or for some of our panelists, you can use either the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen, or you can set your question to the chat. I'll then be able to promote you to a panelist so that we can see and hear you ask your question. You'll be able to ask any follow-up questions as well. So while we wait for any questions to come in or any hands to be raised, I'll also note that the full report that we issued this morning is now available on TRIP's website. You can find that at TripNet, that's TRIPNET.org. And we'll also have a recording of this news conference up there within the next hour or so as well, that you all are free to use in your coverage. So at this point, I don't see any hands raised or any questions at this point, but I'll also note that the advisory that had the Zoom link also has contact information for Rocky and for myself. If you do have any questions as you're going through the report, we're happy to follow up later today. I do see one question that came in from Yvonne. Yvonne, I'll promote you to a panelist, and then you'll be able to ask your question live. Okay, if you mute your line, you can go right ahead.
Hi, I'm a reporter over in Grand Junction at KKCO 11 News. And one major project that's caused a lot of controversy, which Cody should be pretty familiar with, is our 4th and 5th Street project. It's added bike lanes, and it's kind of put a focus on cyclist safety. And some people in our community are a little bit bothered by that. They're saying that money could have been used in a different manner and maybe fix roads or, put money somewhere else, focusing on that motorist safety instead of cycling. So I'm curious to see if other places in the state are putting an emphasis on cycling and bike lists rather than the roads and fixing that infrastructure.
I'll let Cody initially respond to that, and then I'm happy to, and anyone else might want to weigh in on that.
Thank you for the question, and certainly I'd be happy to weigh in on this. I've had a lot of conversations about this, kind of a hot button topic in our community, and it is a concern for me. One of the things that was mentioned early on in the conversation, the press release from TRIP, was talking about the safe systems approach. And if you refer to any of my articles on 4th and 5th or my blog posts, I refer to that safe systems approach and how it's important that we separate the modalities of transportation and that we are looking for opportunities to keep bikes safe and not use them as a traffic calming device, which unfortunately, in my view, that's what we've done in Grand Junction. The systems that we've implemented with basically a hidden bike lane kind of behind a row of parked cars right through our main thoroughfare in town and reducing our 2-lane roadway to a 1-lane roadway has increased the opportunities for conflict and slowed traffic. So when we talk about safe systems approach, one of the other issues and an adjacent issue is keeping traffic flowing and not causing congestion, because not only do those conflict points increase the opportunity for crashes, they also slow traffic, and which is fine. We can slow traffic with in all kinds of ways, but that congestion tends to lead to additional emissions and longer times for people to go. And as we increase their frustration, we also increase the opportunity for crashes as well. So yeah, and statewide, I know Denver's done a lot of that bike infrastructure. I'm not against bike infrastructure. We certainly need multimodal transportation, but doing it in a way that's thoughtful and doesn't intentionally inconvenience motor vehicle traffic is important. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know that I could say much better than Cody did. As the report points out, 16% of traffic fatalities are of pedestrian and bicyclists. And so certainly we want a transportation system that keeps all travelers, motorists, pedestrian and bicyclists safe. But the state faces, urban areas faces significant challenges in terms of reliability. And so the lack of adequate resources can turn into a discussion of which mode should be supported. The reality is we need to be improving the reliability of our roads and highways, but we also need to be improving the safety of our transportation system and our urban transportation system for motors, pedestrian, and bicyclists. It's not choosing one or the other. We need to make improvements for all travelers. Jessica, you.
Yeah, thank you. I would just weigh in on that as well. It's not always a competition of funds in that space either. It is sometimes grant money that comes specifically for bike and different modalities, and so the cost is pretty significantly less for bike expansion. But I understand what you're saying about using a lane that was meant for traffic versus bikes. And so I think most of us are looking at whatever modalities we can, as a lot of people are turning to bike riding and just making sure that they're safe if that is what we decide to expand on. But usually those are not in competition, those dollars.
Yvonne, thanks for your question. And I'll defer back to Carolyn if there are additional questions.
I don't see any additional questions right now, Rocky.
Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and conclude today's news conference. Again, I want to thank our panelists for taking time from their busy days to participate. It really helps to really help with our message and really point out the local importance of the transportation system. And again, thank all of the journalists who, again, took time to take an interest in this very important subject. And hope everyone has a safe and prosperous day. Thank you.